Hey YouTube, it's Charlie from Reader to Writer. Today I am sharing my May 2020 wrap-up. In my wrap-ups, I like to share a one-line synopsis of the book. Then I like to share a very short, usually one-line review of what I thought of the book. I do have a bullet page for it, so I will cut over to that now and jump right in. Before I jump into the books that I read, I wanted to highlight my top 3 favorites. The first is Across a Starswept Sea by Diana Peterfreund. This is a YA dystopian retelling of The Scarlet Pimpernel. The second was The Light of All That Falls by James Islington. This was the third and final book in a epic fantasy trilogy that actually reminded me a lot of Brandon Sanderson books. The third is The Vanderbeekers of 141st Street by Karina Jan Glasser. This is a very popular middle grade contemporary that has a really cute family and a lot of fun sibling relationships going on. Now I will jump into all of the books that I read in May. I read the first 3 It Chronicles, The Field Guide, The Seeing Stone, and Lucinda's Secret by Tony DiTerlizzi and Holly Black. When their dad leaves, their mom takes Jared, Simon, and Mallory to their aunt's old rundown house. While Jared is working through his anger, he finds a field guide that opens up a dangerous world full of fairy creatures. This series is our current read aloud, and my 5-year-old loves them. The first is a little slower and more of an introduction, but the second picks up very quickly. I do think they are much more interesting to the target age group than to adults than other middle grade books that I have read. I also read Across a Starswept Sea by Diana Peterfreund, and I rated this 5 stars. This is a Scarlet Pimpernel retelling set in a dystopian future. It's set in the same world as For Darkness Shows the Stars. While you could read this independent of the first, there are characters from the first that appear in the second, so I probably would recommend reading For Darkness Shows the Stars first, which is a Persuasion by Jane Austen retelling. I honestly love this book. I really felt the retelling captured the feeling of the original book. I really loved seeing the parallels to the original and the unique way the story went with the sci-fi world and with the Scarlet Pimpernel being female. There were a lot of really unique aspects while still staying true to the original book. I also read the graphic novel The Amazing Spiderman by Stan Lee, and I rated this 4 stars. This is a collection of the original Spider-Man comic books back in the 60s, I believe. I have always loved Spider-Man best out of all the superheroes, and I also really like the style of these older comics, so I really enjoyed that collection. I did DNF a book in the middle of the month, and it was my nonfiction read, My Sister, My Friend. It was a nonfiction LDS book. It was more of a supportive, uplifting book than having any doctrine or anything like that in it. It wasn't bad, but it also didn't have anything that made it stand out to me, so it lost my interest. Because I didn't finish that nonfiction book, I picked up The Compound Effect by Darren Hardy, and I rated it 3 stars. This is a self-help book talking about the idea that small actions lead to big results. It had some good ideas throughout it, but I didn't love the author or the way that he explained many of the ideas. And then of course I read The Vanderbeekers of 141st Street by Karina Jan Glasser, and I rated it 4 stars. The Vanderbeeker family have always lived on 141st Street, so when their landlord refuses to renew their lease, the kids hatch a plan. This was a charming, lighthearted read. It was a little predictable, but for me that was actually enjoyable, and I had a lot of fun with it. I had it heard compared to the Penderwicks before, but it didn't quite live up to that, so I would recommend going in without that expectation. And I also think it would be the perfect read to save for the holidays because it takes place around Christmas. And then I read Maisie Dobbs by Jacqueline Winspear, and I rated this 3 stars. This is presented as an historical mystery, but it's actually more of a character-driven, introspective historical fiction that has some mystery aspects to it. It takes place years after World War I and focuses on the emotional impact that the war left on people. The beginning was very slow, and because of my expectations going in, I didn't love it as much at first. The middle of the book is a flashback to the main character's background, which I personally loved, and then the ending picked up more in regards to the mystery. It was an okay read, but I'm not sure I will continue the series. Another historical type book that I read was Just Jane by Nancy Moser, and I also rated this 3 stars. This is a biographical historical fiction. It was enjoyable, and I love more about Jane Austen and seeing where some of her inspiration might have come from, since I love all of her books. Just Jane did drag for me a little bit though, especially by the end, and I felt like it was a little too long. Near the end of the month I was wanting a shorter read, so I picked up The Rose Legacy by Jessica Day George and I rated it 4 stars. When orphaned Althea is sent beyond the borders of her country, she discovers that not only do magical horses still exist, but she has a special bond with them. I enjoyed this fairy tale-esque story, but I was really left wanting more. It was a short read, which made for a fast-paced plot, but it also left a lot of the world and characters feeling not quite as fleshed out as I wanted them to be. My final read was The Light of All That Fails by James Islington, and I rated this 5 stars. This was my audiobook this month, and the final book in the Lycanius trilogy, an epic fantasy. It was a very satisfying ending. The book was about a 4-star rating for me until I got to the ending, but the epilogue tied things together, both for this book and the entire series. It tied it together so well and with such a great conclusion that I had to bump it up to 5 stars. I didn't have as many 5-star ratings this month, but I also didn't have any terrible reads, so overall it was a fairly good reading month. How did your reading month go last month? What was your favorite book that you read? I would love to hear it down in the comments below. If you like this video, don't forget to hit that thumbs up button and subscribe for lots of bookish and writing content. Thank you so much for watching my video. I will see you in the next one.